Stormfall had always been a fortress, built to withstand monsters. No one ever expected the worst one to be its own king. At dawn, before the sun had fully broken over the mountains, the first roar shattered the morning air. It wasn't the cry of a man in pain. It was something older, wilder, a sound that didn't belong in the throat of anything human. People froze where they stood. Servants dropped their buckets. Merchants abandoned their carts. And guards scrambled into formation with a kind of fear they didn't bother trying to hide. Everyone knew what that sound meant. The curse of ruin had taken King Aerys Vale again, deep in the northern courtyard, chained to sacred pillars older than the kingdom itself. The king fought against restraints, forged by priests and sealed by moonlight. The iron trembled with every violent pull of his body. Sparks flared where metal scraped stone. His breath came out in guttural, animalistic snarls, each one thick with the kind of fury that had once leveled entire battlefields. Stormfall's walls had seen war. They'd never survived a cursed king in full rage. Mira Solwyn hadn't meant to be anywhere near the courtyard. She'd come only to deliver her basket of herbs to the kitchens, a simple errand. One of the few tasks the palace still trusted an Omega with. But when the roar echoed down the corridor and the crowd surged backward, she found herself shoved through an archway and into the edge of chaos. Armor clattered all around her. Servants shrieked. A guard grabbed her arm and barked at her to move. But she couldn't. Her feet refused to obey. Her breath hitched as her eyes found the figure at the center of the courtyard. Aerys Vale. Everyone knew his name. The immortal Alpha, the cursed king who had ruled for a century and a half, but lived with a fury that could break a kingdom. They said he kept control only through iron discipline and an unending war against his own blood. But today, that discipline was gone. His eyes normally are cold. Steely silver burned, crimson. His claws had torn grooves into the stone beneath him. The veins in his arms glowed like molten metal, and the roar that ripped from his chest made her feel as if the world itself had cracked. Mira shouldn't have been able to see him so clearly. But something in her refused to look away. Something in her chest tugged a strange, almost painful pull, like threads tightening around her heart. She pressed a hand there, breath shallow, trying to steady herself. Around here, two men lifted crossbows. Arrows, tipped with moonsleep, darted toward the sky. "Stop," Mira shouted without thinking. "You're making it worse." Several guards whipped around. Eyes narrowed, as if offended and nobody dared speak. But it was too late. Her voice had already cut through the panic. The king's head snapped in her direction. For a heartbeat, the world froze. His crimson gaze locked onto hers. Not onto the guards. Not the healers. Not the priests shouting incantations. Her. Mira's pulse hammered so hard she felt it in her palms. She couldn't breathe. She couldn't think. She could only stare back as something ancient and terrifying flickered in his eyes. Recognition or hunger, or something far more dangerous. He lungered. The chains whiplashed. The pillars shuddered. Several guards screamed warnings she didn't hear. Time stretched thin. A single thread ready to snap. Mira didn't understand why she moved. She didn't understand why she didn't run like everyone else. Instinct. Or fate. Or some unseen force pushed her forward. Her hand lifted, and before fear could catch up, her palm pressed flat against the king's chest. Silence. Every sound vanished, swallowed by a shockwave of absolute stillness. Aerys's body went rigid beneath her touch. Muscles frozen, mid-snarl. The crimson in his eyes flickered, dimmed, then dissolved into a stormy grey that looked almost human. His breath, once ragged and violent, steadied beneath her fingers. One beat, then another, slow, even, peaceful. Mira didn't move. Couldn't move. Her hand tingled where it met his skin. Warmth spreading up her arm and into her chest in a way that made her knees weak. It felt like stepping out of a nightmare into a world she'd never known existed. Around them, whispers arose like wind in dry grass. Impossible, She stopped him. And Omega stopped the curse. Eris lowered his head slightly, his forehead nearly brushing hers. His voice, when it came, was barely more than a broken whisper. "What are you?" Mira didn't have an answer. All she knew was that when she touched him, the monster vanished, and the man remained. For a long moment, no one breathed. Mira's hand still rested against the king's chest, her fingers trembling, her heart beating far too fast. She could feel the steady rise and fall of his breath beneath her palm, calm now. Impossibly calm, as if her touch had smothered a raging wildfire and left only embers behind. Then Eris Vale, the cursed Alpha King, feared across the realm. Did something no one expected. He curled his fingers around her wrist and refused to let go. His grip wasn't violent. It wasn't even firm. But there was something unyielding in it. Something final. As if releasing her would plunge him back into whatever nightmare she had rescued him from. The courtyard. Moments ago, a storm of terror. Now held a fragile, trembling stillness. Eris's voice, roar from roaring, broke that silence. No one touches her. The command rolled through the courtyard like a blade of cold wind. Every guard froze mid-movement. Some dropped their weapons entirely. A few stared at Mira as if she had sprouted wings made of moonlight. Mira's throat tightened. "Your Majesty, I shouldn't be here. I'm not." Her voice cracked on the truth she had carried for years. "I'm just a rejected Omega." For a heartbeat, something dark and furious flared across Eris's face, not at her. Never at her, but at the title she used for herself. His eyes, still storm grey again, instead of crimson, fixed on her with an intensity that made heat rise in her cheeks. "No," he said. "Quiet, but absolute. There's light in you." His gaze dropped to where his fingers held her wrist, just above the faded scar that marked her rejection. I felt it. Mira wanted to pull back, to tuck her hand against her chest, and hide the mark that had defined her entire life. But his grip tightened the slightest bit, not forcing, but pleading, as if he feared she might slip away like a dream he wasn't ready to wake from. Then the burning started. A low, simmering heat beneath her skin. Mira gasped softly and looked down. Her rejection marked the ugly, jagged rune carved into her wrist, years ago, glowed faintly. A thin thread of silver, pulsing beneath the scar. The color was soft, delicate, like moonlight caught in water. It flickered once, twice, then died down. A murmur rippled through the courtyard. High Priestess Sorella, who had just arrived and now stood at the edge of the scene, with her ceremonial robes half undone from rushing, stared at Mira with undisguised alarm. "This girl is not what she seems," Sorella whispered, barely audible but loud enough for everyone to hear. Mira flinched. The words felt too close to accusation, the kind that got Omegas punished. Exiled. Cast out. She tried to step back, to reclaim her hand, to explain anything that might make sense of the impossible moment. But Eris didn't let her go. His hand rose slow, almost reverent, guiding hers, from where it rested on his chest to just over his heart, as if confirming the calm she had given him was real. His breath deepened the instant her skin touched his skin again. The lines of tension carved into his face softened. When he finally spoke, his voice had lost all the violence it held moments ago. "Who are you, Mira?" Swallowed hard. Her name felt suddenly too small, too plain, too unworthy of being spoken to a king who looked at her like she was sunlight after centuries underground. "Mira," she managed, barely above a whisper. "Just Mira." Eris tilted his head, studying her as if the simple word didn't satisfy him at all, as if he could somehow see every moment she'd spent trying to erase herself to survive. His eyes softened, but not in pity. More like wonder, more like recognition. "Nothing about you is just," he murmured. Her breath caught. Behind them, the courtyard remained motionless. Guards stood rooted in place, unable to decide whether to intervene or bow. Sorella watched with a mixture of awe and fear. as though witnessing a prophecy unfold. Even the air felt hesitant to move, waiting to see what would happen next. Mira's pulse thundered as she tried to make sense of it all, the stillness, the warmth beneath her hand, the way the king's presence no longer felt like a storm but a tether. For the first time in her life, someone looked at her as though she were more than the mark on her wrist, more than the girl no pack wanted. Eris drew in a slow breath, and Mira felt the rumble of it beneath her palm. "When you touched me," he said quietly. The rage vanished. Not dimmed, not eased. His eyes locked onto hers, silver and steady. "It obeyed you." Mira shook her head quickly, panic rising again. "I didn't do anything. I swear I didn't mean." His fingers brushed gently against her wrist, right over the place that had flickered with light. The touch sent a strange, warm shiver up her arm. "You saved me," he whispered. She stared at him, unable to look away, unable to speak, unable to understand why the cursed king, the man feared by every clan in the realm, now held her as if she were the only thing keeping him grounded. High Priestess Sorella's voice trembled. This changes everything." But Mira barely heard her, because the king's heart beat beneath her hand steady. Calm, human, and her own heart answered in perfect rhythm. The calm that had settled over the courtyard did not last. It couldn't. Peace was never meant to linger long in Stormfall. A low horn sounded from the outer walls, one long, mournful note that vibrated through stone and bone alike. The guards stiffened first, then the servants, then even Eris's grip on Mira's wrist tensed. Though he never let her go. A second horn followed, then a third. Mira felt the shift in the air the way dread could creep in like a cold wind. She recognized that pattern of horn calls. Every wolf did. They were the summons used only for one thing. A royal pack was arriving unannounced. Mira's stomach knotted. Only one pack used that exact cadence. Only one whose presence made the guards on the battlements curse under their breath. The Bloodfall pack. The massive gates of Stormfall groaned as they opened, letting in a line of armored warriors in crimson-trimmed black. Their footsteps were synchronized. Predatory. Far too confident for men who should have shown deference to the kingdom they were entering. At their head rode a man Mira would have given anything never to see again. Prince Draven Calethorn. He dismounted before the gates finished closing behind him. His dark hair gleamed like polished steel. His eyes, the deep wine red that marked the Bloodfall royals. Broad-shouldered, tall, undeniably handsome, but in a way that carried danger instead of warmth. Draven Calethorn looked like a man carved to lure and kill. His gaze swept the courtyard, taking in the shattered chains, the shaken guards, and finally her. A slow, poisonous smirk curled across his mouth. "Well?" he drawled, the word dripping satisfaction. So the little reject finally awakened. Mira felt her heart stop. She couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't look away, because this was the man who had carved her rejection mark, the man who had pressed her wrist into the stone altar and sliced into her skin as she begged him to stop, the man who watched her cry and declared her unfit to belong anywhere. Her nightmares had his face. And now he stood here, looking at her like a toy he'd misplaced and finally found. Eris stiffened beside her. His fingers tightened around her hand, anchoring her, protecting her. A low, rumbling growl built in his chest, different from the curse. Deeper, colder. Draven's eyes flicked to the king and brightened with interest. "Your Majesty," Draven said with a mocking bow. "You seem calmer than rumor suggested." Eris's voice emerged, rough and dangerous. "Say what you came to say." "Oh, I intend to." Draven lifted a hand, and one of his warriors stepped forward, offering a tightly rolled scroll, sealed with the Bloodfall crest. Draven cracked the seal with deliberate slowness. "I'm here for her." Every muscle in Eris's body went taut. Draven read loudly, savoring every word. By decree of ancient pack law, the rejection of Mira Solwyn was deemed incomplete. As such, he rolled the scroll closed and smiled directly at her. "She still belongs to the Bloodfall pack." Mira stumbled backward, but Eris caught her. pulling her behind him with a snarl that rattled the courtyard. You carved her. Eris growled. You cast her out. You have no claim. Draven arched a brow. On the contrary. Since the ritual wasn't sealed under the full moon, the bond between us remains legally intact. He looked back at Mira, eyes gleaming with cruel amusement. She is still mine. Mira found her voice, though it shook. I'm not yours. I'm not anyone's. Draven's smile widened. Oh, little one. You always were. You simply didn't know your worth. Eris stepped forward, the temperature around him dropping like winter breath. If you touch her, I will break every bone in your body. Draven clicked his tongue. Temper. Temper. You're speaking as if she's your omega. Is that what this is? His gaze slid to where Eris still held Mira's hand. Or has the cursed king grown sentimental? The sound that came from Eris was pure danger, but Draven only laughed. No matter. There's a civilized way to resolve this. He tossed the scroll to the ground. Old law, he said. Single combat et dus. The victor claims the contested omega. Mira's heart dropped into her stomach. I'm not a prize, she snapped, stepping forward despite her fear. I won't let either of you decide my life. Neither man looked at her. Two alphas, locked in a silent, violent standoff. Rage twisted through Mira, not the kind that shattered stone like Eris's curse, but something sharp and hot, something sick of being ignored, something tired of being spoken about instead of spoken to. Stop ignoring me, she shouted. Both men finally turned toward her, but too late. Her mark ignited. A pulse of silver light burst from her wrist. Blinding and alive, as if moonlight itself had cracked open inside her skin. The air trembled. The courtyard flashed white. Every warrior, every guard, even Eris and Draven, stumbled backward. When the brightness faded, Mira stood trembling, clutching her wrist. Her rejection scar, normally a dull, ugly slash glowed beneath the skin, its edges shifting into faint, intricate patterns she didn't recognize. Eris stared at her in stunned silence. Draven's amusement evaporated, replaced by something darker. Well now, he murmured. That changes things. High Priestess Sorella crossed herself with shaking fingers. Her eyes widened in horrified awe. Moonborn, she whispered. But they were wiped out centuries ago. Mira froze. Moonborn. She didn't even know what that meant. Draven's eyes glittered with a hunger that made her blood run cold. So the rumors were true. He murmured. Your power was only sleeping. Eris stepped between them instantly, placing himself like a wall in front of Mira. I don't care what law you cite, he said. You will not take her. Draven tilted his head. We'll see. He gave Mira one final, lingering look, the kind that promised danger. Ownership. Obsession. Then he turned to leave, his warriors falling into formation behind him. As the gates closed behind the bloodful prince, Mira felt her legs weaken. Eris caught her again, steadying her without a word. The courtyard remained frozen in stunned silence. But one truth echoed louder than any horn. Whatever Mira was before, whatever she believed herself to be, that identity was gone. Moonborn, and both men intended to claim her, one to protect, one to possess. Mira didn't know what she truly was, but Stormfall did, and Bloodfall did, and Eris Vale, holding her hand like it was the only thing keeping him alive, seemed certain of only one truth. She had just become the most sought-after power in the realm. The guards scattered as Eris pulled Mira from the courtyard and into a quiet corridor, his hand still wrapped around hers, like an instinct he couldn't break. She didn't resist. She couldn't. Her wrist still throbbed with that strange silver glow, and her thoughts tangled like threads in a storm. He didn't speak at first. His jaw was locked tight, each step furious, purposeful, until they reached an iron door, carved with symbols she'd never seen. He touched his palm to the metal, and the door rumbled open, revealing a staircase spiraling into darkness. Where are we going? Mira managed. To the only place where I can give you answers, Iris said. His voice was still rough, still trembling from a blend of anger and something more fragile. The truth lives below, not up here where lies are carved into law. Mira swallowed hard and followed. The air cooled as they descended, the stone walls glowing faintly with soft blue veins of crystal. By the time they reached the bottom, her breath caught. The hidden chamber was enormous shelves of ancient scrolls, towering bookcases, relics sealed in glass, and murals painted with pigments that shimmered like starlight. This, Iris said quietly, is the archive of Stormfall. Only kings and their chosen can enter. Mira's heart stumbled. But I'm not. You are chosen. He cut in, softer than she expected. Whether you want to be or not, she couldn't answer. Iris stepped past her and gestured toward an enormous tapestry stretching across the back wall. Mira's eyes widened. It showed two figures, a massive wolf wrapped in dark, burning energy, and beside it, a being made of pure silver light. Neither wolf nor human, but something flowing, shifting, radiant, moonborn. Iris said, Your people. Mira's breath stilled. They were rare. He continued. Born once every few centuries. Not wolves. Not humans. Something between. Living conduits of lunar energy. Their touch could calm cursed alphas, heal corrupted magic, balance the darkness that lived in certain bloodlines. Mira stared at the glowing figure. For the first time, she felt something stir inside her, not understanding. Not memory, but resonance. As if some part of her recognized the shape made of light, but they were wiped out. She whispered. Sorella said, hunted. Eris corrected. Destroyed by kings and alphas, who feared what they didn't understand. Your kind threatened their power. Balance always threatens those who rule through force. Mira's hands trembled. But I'm not, I can't be, I'm nothing. I didn't even have a wolf. I couldn't shift. Everyone said I was defective. Eris turned to her, with an expression that could have cracked stone. You were never defective. But Mira couldn't stop. The words burst out. Ragged and broken. The Bloodfall pack rejected me in front of the entire clan. They said I was weak. Worthless. A burden. Draven carved it into my skin. She lifted her wrist, the scar faintly glowing. This mark ruined my life. It ruined me. Eris stepped closer. Shadows and moonlight painting, his features in sharp relief. That mark, he said. Voice darkening. Suppressed you. It wasn't a rejection glyph. It was a binding rune. Mira froze. A binding rune, she echoed. He nodded. Designed to smother moonborn energy. To keep your light from awakening. To make you believe you were powerless, so no one would notice what you truly were. Her stomach twisted. So, my weakness was engineered. Yes, it was such a small word for such a devastating truth. Her legs wavered. She pressed a hand to the edge of a table, fighting to breathe. My whole life, I thought I was nothing. Eris moved before she finished the sentence. His hand rose. Slowly. As if he feared she'd flinch, but she didn't. His fingers brushed her cheek with a tenderness she had no defenses against. His touch was warm. Grounding. Painfully gentle. Mira, he said. Her name shaped like a vow. You are the only thing that has ever brought me peace. The word struck her as deeply as any blade. She lifted her gaze to his, finding storm-grey eyes filled with something she didn't dare name. His thumb brushed her cheekbone. A slow, careful stroke that sent a shiver down her spine. You think you're nothing, he murmured. But when you touched me, you silenced a curse that has tormented me for 3 centuries. Mira swallowed, her breath catching. I didn't try to. It just happened. And that, he whispered, is exactly why it matters. Silence deepened between them, not empty. Not awkward, but charged. Heavy. Electric. The kind of silence where the world narrows to one heartbeat. One breath. One person. Eris's hand slid from her cheek to her jaw, tilting her face toward his. He stepped closer until her knees almost buckled, until she could feel the warmth of him ripple through her like light through water. Her pulse thundered. His breath brushed her lips. "Mira," he said, barely audible. "Tell me to stop." She didn't speak. She couldn't. The world seemed to lean toward them, drawn by a gravity older than Stormfall. Older than curses, or thrones, or fear. His forehead lowered toward hers, close enough that her eyelashes fluttered. A sharp voice shattered the moment like glass. "Your Majesty." Eris went still. Mira jerked back a half step. I breath, unsteady. Heart in freefall. High Priestess Sorella stood in the doorway, looking far too composed for someone who had just detonated the air between two people. Her expression was tense. Her tone, formal, but strained. "Prince Draven demands his pre-combat audience. By old law. You cannot refuse." Eris's jaw clenched with murder. Mira's heart sank with dread. The moment that fragile, trembling, almost kiss, dissolved like smoke under Sorella's words. Eris didn't look away from Mira. Not even when he answered. "Then he will speak," he said, in a voice cold as iron. "But he will not speak to her alone." Sorella bowed. "As you wish." "Your Majesty." Mira felt the weight of every choice converging the truth of her lineage. Draven's intentions. The awakening of powers she didn't understand, and the king whose eyes still held the echo of a kiss that never quite happened. Stormfall was shifting around her, reshaping itself with every revelation, every heartbeat, and she realized, with a tremor of fear and longing, that nothing in her life, not her past, not her power, not her heart would ever be the same again. The great hall of Stormfall had never felt colder. Its vaulted ceilings and carved pillars seemed to stretch higher than usual. The shadows deeper. The air sharpened by anticipation. Mira stood between Eris and High Priestess Sorella as Prince Draven Calthorn waited at the center of the chamber, hands clasped behind his back, as if he were greeting friends instead of enemies. His blood-red eyes gleamed in the torchlight when he saw Mira. "There she is," he murmured. "My brightest mistake. My greatest triumph." Eris moved in front of Mira instantly. A barrier of muscle and fury. "Say what you have come to say." Kael'thorn. Quickly, Draven tilted his head. "Amused. You're shaking." "Your Majesty." "Interesting. I never imagined the Cursebreaker would make the cursed king tremble." Eris's growl rumbled through the hall. Draven ignored it. Instead, he approached Mira. Each step echoed like a heartbeat counting down. "You've grown, little one," he said softly. "The light in you is finally waking." Mira felt her limbs lock. The memories clawed their way to the surface. Her wrist pressed against cold stone, his blade carving the rune. The humiliation, the burning pain, his voice calling her worthless. Eris sensed her fear and took her hand without looking at her. His grip steady. Grounding. Draven's smirk deepened. "Do you know why I cast you out?" "Mira Solwyn. Why I wrote that rune into your skin myself." Sorella lifted a warning hand, but Draven lifted his voice. "Because you were moonborn." Mira flinched. Eris stiffened. "Yes." Draven continued, prowling slowly around them. "Even as a child, your aura burned too bright. My seers felt it. The last surviving moonborn lineage, hidden in my territory. A miracle. A threat," Mira managed to whisper. "But I didn't have any power, because I bound it," Draven said simply. "I carved a sigil, a cursed rejection rune, designed not to cast you out but to lock you down." Her breath caught. "You were meant to sleep," he said, almost tenderly. "Moonborn energy is volatile when young. Dangerous. Untamed. I couldn't have you awakening under the wrong hands." "Under the wrong hands," Eris spat. "You mean anyone but yours?" Draven smiled. "Exactly. Mira Feltzik. You've ruined my life. To use me. To protect my pack," he corrected. "And one day, to command kingdoms." Draven reached inside his coat and pulled out a small crystal vial filled with swirling black liquid. It pulsed like something alive. Let me show you. Mira. Stay back. Eris warned. But Draven was already uncorking the vial. The scent of metal and madness filled the hall. This, Draven said, lifting it to the light, is Purfrelhagissance. It amplifies Alpha Fury beyond control. A weapon born from the blood of dying gods. He raised the vial in a mock toast. Let's demonstrate what you were born to do. And he drank it. Mira gasped as Draven doubled over. His breath exploded out, in a roar so violent the flames in the torches flickered. His eyes turned pitch black. His veins bulged, darkening. His body convulsed with the feral transformation. Eris lunged to shield Mira. But Draven's voice ripped through the frenzy. Touch me. The binding rune on Mira's wrist ignited like a brand being pressed to her skin. She stumbled forward with a cry. Pulled by magic she couldn't fight. Eris grabbed her shoulders. No, Mira. Don't. Draven roared again. And the pull intensified. Dragging her closer. One more second. Draven hissed through snapping fangs. And I lose control. And I'll begin with your king. Mira cried out, as the binding rune forced her hand upward. Stretching her toward him, she pressed her palm to his forearm, unwilling but compelled, and the effect was immediate. His roaring stopped. The black drained from his eyes. The feral rage evaporated like smoke in wind. But Mira's strength poured out with it. The world tilted. Her body folded in on itself. Knees giving out. Eris caught her before she hit the floor, scooping her into his arms, as if she weighed nothing. Mira, Mira. Look at me. His voice cracked. Breathe. Look at me. Her head lolled against his chest. Her skin cold. Her pulse fluttering like broken wings. Draven straightened, wiping the back of his hand across his mouth. Fully restored. Fully in control. Amazing. Isn't it? He said lightly. With her, I can weaponize the feral state. Unleash it. Contain it. Direct it. Entire armies could become beasts at my command. Eris surged to his feet. Fury erupting like a storm. I'll tear you apart, Draven smiled. You almost did. Twice. Your temper is delicious. Eris's curse stirred. Mira felt it rising like heat beneath his skin. She forced her trembling hand to touch his chest. Just one touch, and his rage vanished again. His breath steadied. His eyes softened. His shoulders dropped from their killing tension. She saved him again, but she grew even paler from the effort. Sorella stepped forward, voice tight with urgency. There is one way to sever the binding rune. Your Majesty. One path that breaks all false bonds. Eris looked at her sharply. What path? The Queen's right. The chamber fell still. Sorella swallowed. It is the oldest law. The most sacred trial. The moon goddess herself judges the challenger. If she finds Mira worthy, the binding dissolves. She becomes free, fully and forever. And if she fails, Eris asked. Sorella bowed her head. Her spirit dies. Her body feels every second of it. Eris's horror twisted into desperation. No. Absolutely not. Mira stirred in his arms. Eris, he dropped to his knees with her, gripping her hands tightly. As if holding her could tether her soul to her body. Mira, I don't even think it. I won't let you risk. She looked up at him. Eyes weary but clear. I choose the trial. Eris froze. Mira. His voice broke on her name. Please. She cupped his cheek. And for the first time since she'd met him, the king, who feared nothing, looked terrified. My whole life. Mira whispered. Others chose for me. They decided my worth, my future, my fate. Her thumb brushed his jaw. His breath caught. Let me choose for myself. Eris. His forehead fell to hers a plea. A confession. A silent scream. Her fingers threaded through his. He whispered. Voice raw. I can't lose you. And Mira whispered back. Then trust me to fight for myself. The way you fight for me. Mira had never felt fear like this. Not even when Draven carved the rejection rune into her skin. Not even when the king's curse had lunged for her throat. Fear now was different, quieter. Heavier. the kind that came from stepping toward truth rather than danger. The moonpool waited in the heart of the sacred chamber, its surface shimmering like liquid starlight, its glow pulsing in slow, hypnotic breaths. The air hummed with ancient energy, vibrating along Mira's bones, as if calling something buried deep inside her. Ares stood behind her, silent but pleading. His hand hovered near her shoulder, wanting to touch her, to stop her, to pull her back, but knowing he couldn't. Not this time. Mira took a breath that felt too big for her lungs. Then she stepped into the moonpool. The world vanished. She didn't fall into water. She fell into light, weightless, endless, blinding. Stars stretched beneath her feet, constellations swirling like living rivers. The air smelled of cold moonlight and old memories. Her heartbeat echoed through the realm like a drum, and then the visions came. They didn't appear gently. They struck her like storms. She was 7 again, hiding behind a stack of crates, while her pack celebrated the summer festival without her. Laughter filled the courtyard. Not one voice called her name. The loneliness tasted metallic, heavy. Then the memory ripped away, replaced by another. She was 15, trembling, while the others shifted under the full moon, their wolves emerging one by one. And she could not even a flicker of power. She remembered the snickers, the pity, the whispers, broken. Someone had said, "Defective." Another murmured. Mira squeezed her eyes shut. But the realm didn't allow her to escape. The next memory cut deepest, the rejection ceremony, her wrist pinned to stone. Draven's blade glinting, the cold press of metal, the cut, the burn, her own voice pleading for mercy she never received, her body curled inward from the phantom pain. Her breath shuddered. "I don't want to see this," she whispered. A voice answered, one that wasn't Draven's. Or Ares's. Or her own. "Then why did you bury it?" Mira lifted her gaze. The moon goddess stood before her. She did not have a single form. She shifted with every blink. Sometimes a woman robed in silver. Sometimes a massive wolf made of constellations. Sometimes a presence too bright to look at, too vast to comprehend. "Mira Solwyn," the goddess said. Her voice was wind on snow. A mother's lullaby. The echo of storms. "You invoke the queen's right. You seek to break the chains carved into your soul." Mira's voice was small. I don't know who I am without those chains." The goddess circled her, the stars moving with her steps. "You were called weak." Visions flashed laughter at her expense. Eyes rolling. Doors closing on her face. "You believed them." Mira swallowed. "I did. You were cast out." The memory of Draven's smirk burned hot against her mind. "You accepted it." "I didn't know any better," she whispered, tears building. "I didn't know I could fight." "You desired love," the goddess continued, her voice neither cruel nor kind, simply true. "And you hid it, buried it, pretended you needed nothing so you could survive losing everything." That broke something in Mira's chest. Her knees hit the glowing ground, tears dripping into the starlight. "I don't know who I am without their labels," she choked. "Without their cruelty. Without their voices telling me what I can't be. I don't know what's left." The goddess leaned down, and for the first time, her voice softened. "Then choose who you want to become." The visions faded. The stars dimmed. Silence stretched. Inside that silence, Mira searched. She reached past the girl who cowered, past the girl who pleaded, past the girl who broke. She dug deeper into the ache, the longing, the spark that refused to die, no matter how many times the world tried to smother it. And she found something. Light. Small at first. Then brighter still, until it wasn't light but her. Energy. Power. Healing. Balance. A core, not of wolf or weakness, but of moonfire. She rose to her feet slowly. But power rose with her. Her skin glowed softly, then fiercely. Silver spilled across her arms like molten light, tracing patterns older than the kingdom itself. Her hair lifted in a soft halo. Her heartbeat throbbed with lunar energy. When she spoke, Her voice carried starfire. I am not what they said I was. The goddess watched. Expression unreadable. Mira lifted her wrist. The old rejection rune cracked, shattered, then dissolved into silver dust. I am Moonborn. The goddess bowed her head. Mira Solwyn. You have spoken truth. You have faced the self you feared. You are worthy. A wave of power surged through Mira. She gasped, as the last remnants of Draven's binding snapped, the invisible chains falling away like smoke. Freedom. True freedom. The starlight dimmed. The goddess's form grew distant. Fading, like a setting moon. But hurry, she warned. Your king bleeds. His curse burns. And in the waking realm, he does not have much time. The realm shattered, and Mira tore back into her body with a gasp. Reborn in light. The first thing Mira felt when she erupted from the moonpool was breath, as if the world had been holding it, waiting for her rebirth. Liquid light dripped from her skin, fading into the air like sparks dying from a blade. Every inch of her throbbed with new power, warm, humming, alive. But beneath that new strength pulsed something else. Fear. Eris. She didn't wait for her legs to steady. She ran. The corridors blurred around her, each step streaking light across the stone. The fortress felt different now, like it leaned toward her, like it recognized her. Doors seemed to open before she touched them. Air parted around her. Even the walls vibrated with a low, ancient hum that felt almost like welcome home. She burst into the courtyard, and the world nearly stopped. Eris Vale was on his knees. His once mighty frame shook with every breath. His claws torn and dripping crimson. Poison liquid Moon's bane seeped from deep gashes in his chest. His eyes were wrong, burning between silver and violent red. The curse spiraling wildly. He fought, but each movement was slower, weaker. Draven circled him like a wolf, savoring the final bite. More bloodful warriors ringed the courtyard. Some smirked. Others watched with cold calculation. Eris didn't see Mira arrive. He was fighting just to stay conscious. And Draven smiled. You fall the same way every cursed king does. He taunted, flicking poison from his claws. Alone, Mira's power surged so violently the ground cracked beneath her feet. Enough. The word rolled from her like a command from the stars themselves. Light erupted. A wall of silver burst outward, slamming into Draven and throwing him across the courtyard. Bloodfall warriors hit the ground, shields dropping from their hands. Even Stormfall soldiers staggered back in awe or fear. Mira couldn't tell, but the wolves knew. Every wolf Alpha, Beta, Omega, guard or rogue bowed their head instinctively. Their bodies lowered, their throats exposed, not out of submission, out of reverence. Moonborn. Eris lifted his head with effort, eyes finding only her. Mira. His voice was raw, disbelieving, full of something like hope and terror woven together. She dropped to her knees beside him, cupping his face in both hands. The curse surged at her touch, but in the same instant, it faltered, shuddered, broke. Her palms glowed. Light seeped into his skin, burning away the poison in tendrils of smoke. His wounds closed, silver threading through torn flesh to knit it whole. The rage that had tormented him for centuries recoiled from her touch, curled inward, and dissolved, the storm inside him constant. Violent, endless, went silent. Eris inhaled sharply, for the first time in his immortal life. He breathed without pain. When his eyes opened again, they were clear, pure, human, grey as winter skies. Mira, he whispered. You saved me. Tears burned behind her eyes, but joy held them back. Always. She breathed. A shadow moved. Draven, bloodied and furious, charged with a snarl. Mira stood. She didn't raise her hand. She didn't brace for impact. She simply touched him. Just 2 fingers pressed lightly to his temple, and Draven Kael'thorn collapsed with a strangled sound, not from injury, but from memory. Every moment of cruelty he inflicted on her surged through his body. The blade, the rune, the abandonment. The power stolen. The freedom denied. He gasped. Sobbed. Tried to crawl away from the truth tearing through him. Please, enough, he rasped. Shaking violently, Mira stepped back. She could have ended him. Every person in the courtyard knew it. Even Draven knew it, but she didn't. Leave, she said softly. And never bind another soul again. Her voice wasn't a threat. It was a promise of judgment. Draven staggered to his feet and fled. His warriors scrambling after him. Silence fell, not fearful, not stunned, but reverent. Eris rose slowly, still unsteady from the weight of freedom. And when he looked at her, truly looked at her, Mira felt her breath catch. He wasn't the cursed king anymore. He was a man who had just been reborn. You choose your path now, Eris said, his voice quiet but steady. Not prophecy, not law, not my curse. You. He took a step toward her, each word trembling with sincerity. But if you choose me, I will spend my life earning it. The courtyard blurred around her. All she saw was him, the man she had saved. The man who had protected her. The man who looked at her like she was the first dawn. After centuries of darkness, Mira stepped into his arms. I choose you. Eris Vale, she whispered. Not fate. Not destiny. You. Hagisa Ter. It wasn't gentle. It wasn't soft. It was a claim made of devotion. A promise forged in moonlight. A vow that bound nothing except hearts. Silver flowers burst from the ground around them. Radiant blooms that opened only for moonborn light. The wolves howled. A chorus that echoed through the mountains. Stormfall had a new beginning. 1 month later, Stormfall had changed. Where fear once hung like fog, light now poured from every corridor. The cursed king no longer raged. The moonborn queen walked freely among the people. And wolves the kingdom had cast out rejected. Forgotten. Wounded now, travelled from afar. Following whispers of a girl who could see the truth in their souls, Mira met them at the gates, one by one. They stepped forward, and one by one, she placed her hands on their hearts, awakening healers. Tears. Warriors. Gifted Omegas who had been mislabeled and abandoned like she once was. Stormfall became sanctuary. Hope took root again, inside the palace. Eris watched her with a tenderness he had never shown another living being. His mark glowed softly beside hers, symbols not of ownership, but of choice. Mira turned toward him, eyes shining with power and peace. And the kingdom understood. She was once rejected. Now, she was the light that rebuilt kingdoms, and the woman loved by a king who finally knew peace.